Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimar Bhaktivedanta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shri Gurudev ki jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimar Bhaktivedanta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimar Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimar Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shishimar Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Srila Goraksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Ṭhākura ki jai. Nitil Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Nuga Gaudiya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhattadash Raghunath Sharda Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshada Vrinda ki jai. Nama Chai Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gora Mandala Vraja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Bharata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kunda Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Una Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta. Oh, today is, what is it? I think it's Kala Krishnadas's disappearance day today. So Shri Kala Krishnadas ki jai. Tatiya Shubhati Rabhav Titi ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande. Srila Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura ki jai. Shri Sārārtha-darśinī Vritti ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Narayanitti Namine. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo mahavadanyaya Krishna prema pradayate Krishnaya Krishna chaitanya namne gauratvishe namaha. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yang Pravrajantam Apeta Krityam Vipayano Virahaka Tara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Bhinedus Tang Sarva Bhuta Hridayang Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Shrindatang Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridantasto Hyabadrani Vidhunoti Suhrit Satam Nashta Prayeshvavadreshu Nityang Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tavai Vasmi Na Jivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayamang Charanantikam Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshaya Kshiptashtakama Madhe Kripa Mai Tvam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charana Ravindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hari Bo, Raj Bhuvan Yadav ji, Hare Krishna Madhavi Didi, Ganga Mataji, Indira Mataji, Sudevi Didi, Nri Hari Prabhu, Bhavatarani Mataji, Pradyumna Prabhu, Mantramurti Mataji, Yashoda Didi, Dandavat Pranam, everybody. Hari Bo. So today I'm going to just read until it's 8:30. I'm not going to try to get to any particular spot. We have 5,000 words to read, a little bit over 5,000 words, but I'm not even going to worry about the word counts today. I'm just going to read for however long. All right, so, sorry, I meant to say we have 5,000 words till the end of the next chapter, but I'm just going to read slowly. A painful scene of separation. Oh, and also, Dandavat Pranams to Rup Manjari Didi and Nitai, whenever she's going to watch later on. It's today's her birthday, and we're at the saddest part of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, though. Feels kind of bad about that. Anyhow. Okay. A painful scene of separation. Having received Kamsa's orders, noble-hearted Ṭhākura mounted his chariot and set off for Vrindavan. During his journey, he felt intense devotion for Krishna and contemplated, "What pious deeds, worship, and austerities have I done? Today I will see Lord Krishna, although I'm a materialistic person. Today all my sinful reactions will be eradicated, and my birth will become worthwhile, since I will offer my obeisances to Krishna's lotus feet." Thinking thus, Ṭhākura reached the village at the time of sunset. He saw Krishna's footprints with distinguished marks of lotus, goad, etc. He became ecstatic and rolled in the dust. Ṭhākura then saw Krishna and Balaram going to milk the cows. He immediately fell at their feet like a rod. Krishna embraced Ṭhākura and Balaram and took him into their house and gave all hospitality. Nanda Maharaj asked him about the well-being of relatives at Mathura. After the evening meal, upon Krishna's inquiry, Ṭhākura revealed all of Kamsa's plans. Krishna and Balaram laughed and told Nanda Maharaj about Kamsa's plans of the bow festival. But he didn't mention everything. He just mentioned that there was a big bow festival. He didn't mention that Kamsa's plans to kill him. Nanda then issued orders throughout the village to collect milk products and go to Mathura for participating in the festival. When the gopis, who could not bear even a moment's separation from Krishna, heard this news, they became devastated. They feared that Krishna would never come back from Mathura. Meeting in different groups, they began conversing with tears in their eyes and sang the song of separation, the Viraha Gita. They condemned the Creator for creating them. They condemned the Creator for separating them from Krishna after showing them his beautiful face. They commented that Ṭhākura did not deserve his name, since he was so cruel, and taking their dearmost Krishna away. Lamenting their own fate, they blamed Krishna, who, they accused, breaks loving relationships easily. Contemplating the good fortune of the residents of Mathura, they said how the dawn was going to be auspicious for them, for they would be seeing Krishna, the reservoir of all transcendental qualities. Yet, they said, the same dawn would immerse them in mortal agony. Because the elders of Braj were not forbidding Krishna to leave, the gopis decided to try to stop him themselves. Keeping aside their shyness, they loudly cried out, "Govinda Damodara Madhaveti, O Govinda, O Damodar, O Madhav." But even as they wept, Akrura began taking Krishna and Balaram to Mathura in his chariot, followed by the cowherd men of Gokul. The gopis also walked behind for some distance, but then they became pacified by Krishna's glances and gestures that said, "I will return." Not sure if they were totally pacified, but anyways, with their minds completely absorbed in Krishna, they stood as sorry, with their minds completely absorbed in Krishna, they stood as still as figures. They stood as still as figures in a painting until they could no longer see the chariot's flag or the dust cloud being raised. Then, chanting Krishna's glories, they despondently returned to their homes. I just thought maybe it might be nice to read from um, right now. I think maybe it'd be nice to read from about Uddhav Kyari. Oh, that's different. That's Uddhav Kyari. But the gopis, they stayed in Uddhav Kyari, right? Right after Akrura left, right? Anyhow, I'll just continue with our normal reading. Actually, I'm just going to check it out, if you don't mind. Because I'm not going to try to reach any particular spot today. I'm just going to let's see. Let me just search. Uddhav. Okay. Gurudev says, after Sri Krishna's departure to Mathura, all of Raj drowned in an ocean of separation from him. What to speak of the gopas and gopis? Even the birds and animals gave up eating and drinking, feeling distressed in separation from Krishna. Krishna's beloved gopis followed Akrura's chariot to this point and then fell to the ground unconscious. They never returned home again. Grievously afflicted by separation from Krishna, Radhaji stayed in this dense forest and seclusion. She stayed in this dense forest and seclusion. In the hope of Krishna's return, she counted each passing day remaining on the verge of death. At that time, Krishna's messenger Uddhav came here to console the gopis. But upon seeing Srimati Radhika's state of separation, he paid his respects to her from afar, unable to say anything. So we'll get to that part in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. But yeah, maybe some of the gopis returned to their homes, but definitely not Srimati Radhika and her group. They stayed at that very place. Okay. So I'll just read a part of the Viraha Gita at the end of the two last verses. He who is doing this merciless deed should not be called Akrura. He is so extremely cruel that without even trying to console the sorrowful residents of Raj, he is taking away Krishna, who is more dear to us than life itself. And Srila Viśvanātha Ṭhākura said that, that for this offense, that some devotees say that for this offense, Akrura was banished from Krishna's, like, he had to, he couldn't have Krishna's association. Anyways. Hard-hearted Krishna has already mounted the chariot, and now the foolish cowherds are hurrying after him in their bullock carts. Even the elders are saying nothing to stop him. Today, Fate is working against us. Let us directly approach Madhav and stop him from going. What can our family elders and other relatives do to us? Now that fate is separating us from Mukunda, our hearts are already wretched, for we cannot bear to give up his association, even for a fraction of a second. He brought us to the assembly of the Ras dance, where we enjoyed his affectionate and charming smiles, his delightful secret talks, his playful glances, and his embraces. We passed many nights as if they were a single moment. O gopis, how can we possibly cross over the insurmountable darkness of his absence? How can we exist without Ananta's friend Krishna, who in the evening would return to Vraj in the company of the cowherd boys, his hair and garland powdered with the dust raised by the cow's hooves? As he played his flute, he would captivate our minds with his smiling, sidelong glances. Shukadev Goswami said, after speaking these words, the ladies of Vraj, who were so attached to Krishna, felt extremely agitated by their imminent separation from him. They forgot all shame and loudly cried out, Govinda Damodar Madhaveti, O Govinda, O Damodar, O Madhav. But even as the gopis cried out in this way, Cakravartī, having at sunrise performed his morning worship and other duties, began to drive the chariot. Led by Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd men followed behind Lord Krishna in their wagons. The men brought along many offerings for the king, including clay pots filled with ghee and other milk products. With his glances, Lord Krishna somewhat pacified the gopis, and they also followed behind for some time. Then, hoping he would give them some instruction, they stood still. As he departed, that best of the Yadus saw how the gopis were lamenting, and thus he consoled them by sending a messenger with this loving promise, I will return. Sending their minds after Krishna, the gopis stood as motionless as figures in a painting. They remained there as long as the flag atop the chariot was visible, and even until they could no longer see the dust raised by the chariot wheels. The gopis then turned back without hope that Govinda would ever return to them. Full of sorrow, they began to spend their days and nights chanting about the pastimes of their beloved. My dear king, the Supreme Lord Krishna, traveling as swiftly as the wind in that chariot with Lord Balaram and Cakravartī, arrived at the river Kalindi, which destroys all sins. So that's where we read up to yesterday. Tatra pasprishyapaniyam pitva mrishtamani prabham vriksha shandam upavrajya Sārātha-darśinī. The river's sweet water was more effulgent than brilliant jewels. After Lord Krishna had touched it for purification, he drank some from his hand. Then he had the chariot moved near a grove of trees and climbs back on, along with Balaram. Akrurastavupamantya nivesha charato pari kalindya hradamagatya snanang vidhi vadacharat. Cakravartī asked the two lords to take their seats on the chariot. Then, taking their permission, he went to a pool in the Yamuna, took his bath as enjoined in the scriptures. Commentary by Srila Viśvanātha Chakravartī Ṭhākura, Sārārtha-darśinī. Cakravartī kept Krishna and Balaram on the chariot for their comfort, or out of fear of enemies, and then went to the Yamuna. Nimajya tasmin salile japan brahma sanatanam Taveva dadrishe kruro Ramakrishno Samanvito. While immersing himself in the water and reciting eternal mantras from the Vedas, Akrura suddenly saw Balaram and Krishna before him. Commentary. In Vraj, Akrura saw a form more astonishing. In Vraj, Akrura saw a form more astonishing than the one that he meditated on with his personal mantra. So he became fixed in that form. Now, however, since he was no longer hearing the sweet words of the gopis, he had again become fixed in chanting his Vedic Diksha mantra. Krishna showed him Vaikuntha. Taurata stokatam iha sutavana kadundubhe tarhi svit syandhane nasta etyunmajya vyachashtasa tatrapi chayata purvam asino punar evasa nyamajad darshanam yad nyanme mrisha kim saliletayo. Akrura thought, how can the two sons of Anaka Dundubi, who are sitting in the chariot, be standing here in the water? They must have left the chariot. But when he came out of the river, there they were on the chariot, just as before. Asking himself, was the vision I had of them in the water an illusion? Akrura re-entered the pool. Bhuyas tatrapiso drakshit stuyamanam ahishwaram siddhacharana gandharvair asurar natta kandharai sahasra shirsam devam sahasra shirasam devam sahasra panamolinam nilambaram visa shvetam shringai shvetam ivastitam. There Akrura now saw Ananta Shesh, the lord of the serpents, receiving praise from Siddhas, Charanas, Gandharvas, and demons, who all had their heads bowed. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom Akrura saw, had thousands of heads, thousands of hoods, and thousands of helmets. His blue garment and his fair complexion, as white as the filaments of a lotus stem, made him appear like white Kailas mountain with its many peaks. Commentary. When Akrura submerged himself a second time in the Yamuna, he saw Krishna's plenary portion of Sri Vishnu, the worshipable deity of Akrura's own mantra. In order to fix his mind upon Vishnu, Akrura directly meditated upon the Lord's entourage in his form from his toenails to the top of his head. At that time, Akrura declared, my worshipable deity, the Lord of Vaikuntha, has descended in the home of Vasudeva and Mathura. Akrura's Vaikuntha darshan of the Lord is described in 13 verses, from 44 to 56. Verses 44 to 45 describe Ananta Shesh, the expansion of Balaram, who is as white and towering as Mount Kailas, with its peaks of snow, and has thousands of hoods and crowns. When Akrura went into the Yamuna the second time, he saw Shesh and Vaikuntha. This is in accordance with Sridhar Swami's comments on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 10:28-16 and Laghu Bhagavatamrita text 20. Vaikunte pi yata shesho narada sanakadaya akrura drishtane chame dashame parikirtita. Exalted individual souls, jivas, into whom Lord Janardhan enters with a portion of his knowledge potency, his Samvit Shakti, and other potencies, are called aveshas. Shesh, Narad, and the four Kumaras are examples of them. They are examples of them in Vaikuntha. They were seen by Akrura. Shesh is an avesh? Huh? Wow. I did not know that. That is so interesting. Huh, I'll have to look that up again. Tasyot sange ghana syamang pitakoshe avasasam Purusham Chaturbhujam Shantam Parma Shantam Parma Patrarunekshanam Charu Prasanna Charu Hasa Nirikshanam Subhrunasam Charu Karnam Sukapolanura Arunadharam Pralamba Pivara Bhujam Tangang Sura Stalashriyam Kambukantam Nimna Nabhim Valimat Palavodaram. Akrura then saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead lying peacefully on the lap of Lord Anantashesh. The complexion of that Supreme Person was like a dark blue cloud. He wore yellow garments and had 4 arms and reddish lotus petal eyes. His face looked attractive and cheerful with its smiling, endearing glance and lovely eyebrows, its raised nose and finely formed ears, and its beautiful cheeks and reddish lips. The Lord's broad shoulders and expansive chest were beautiful, and his arms long and stout. His neck resembled a conch shell, his navel was deep, and his abdomen bore lines like those on a banyan leaf. Brihat koti tata shroni karabhoru dvayandvitam charu janu yugam charu jangha yugalasang yutam tunga golparuna nakha vrata didhiti virritam Navangulyangusha dalar vilasat padapankajam. He had large loins and hips, thighs like an elephant's trunk, and shapely knees and shanks. His raised ankles reflected the brilliant effulgence emanating from the nails on his petal-like toes, which beautified his lotus feet. Commentary. Text 46 to 50. Shukadeva Goswami describes Krishna's partial expansion known as Narayan in these verses. From the beginning of the 46th verse until the verb vilokya, behold, in the 56th verse, there is one sentence. Narayan had high shoulders and a glossy chest, creased lines on his banyan leaf-shaped belly. He had large buttocks, forearms, thighs like a trunk of an elephant, and slightly raised ankles. His lotus feet had tender petal-like toes. Sumaharha manivrata kirita katakangadhai kati sutra pramasutra haranupura kundalai prajamanam parmakaram shanka chakra gadadharam Shrivatsa vakshasam prajat Kaustubam Vanamalinam. Adorned with a helmet, bracelets, and armlets, which were all bedecked with many priceless jewels, and also with a belt, a sacred thread, necklaces, ankle bells, and earrings. The Lord shone with dazzling effulgence. In one hand he held a lotus flower, and the others a conch shell, discus, and club. Gracing his chest with a Śrīvatsa mark, the brilliant Kaustuba gem, and a flower garland. Sunandananda Pramukhai Parshadai Sanakadivi Sureshar Brahmarudradyar Navabhishcha Dvijottamai Prahrada Narada Vasu Pramukhair Bhagavatotamai Stuyamanam Pritag Bhavar Vachobhir Amalatmabhi Shriya Pushta Gira Kanta Kirtya Tushtelan Tushtelyorjaya Vidyaya Vidyaya Shaktya Mayaya cha Nishevitam. Encircling the Lord and worshipping him were Nanda, Sunanda, and other personal attendants, Sanak and the other Kumaras, Brahma, Rudra, and the other chief demigods, the 9 chief Brahmins, and the best of the saintly devotees headed by Prahlad, Narad, and Uparichara Vasu. Each of these great personalities was worshipping the Lord by chanting sanctified words of praise in his own unique mood. Also in attendance were the Lord's principal internal potencies, Shri, Pushti, Gir, Kanti, Kirti, Tushti, Ila, and Urja, as were his material potencies, Vidya, Avidya, and Maya, and his internal pleasure potency, Shakti. Very interesting. It says Nanda, Sunanda, and his other personal attendants. Is that actually referring to his father and his youngest uncle? Sunanda is the youngest uncle, right? Of Krishna's. I don't know. Commentary. Text 53. Each of these exalted personalities was worshipping Narayan by chanting sanctified words of praise in his own unique mood. The personal attendants of Narayan addressed him as their master. Maybe it doesn't, I don't think it refers to Nanda Maharaj and his uncle Sunanda. The 4 Kumars worshipped him as Brahman. Brahma and other demigods worshipped Narayan as the supreme controller. Marichi and others worshipped him as the lord of the progenitors. Prahlad and others praised him as their worshipable deity. Yeah, because it says the personal attendants of Narayan for this first group. So, yeah. The associates of Lord Narayan stood around him in the 8 directions. The 4 Kumars stood behind Narayan. Brahma and the demigods to the right. Marichi and the other Brahman sons of Brahma to the left. Prahlad and other great devotees in front. And Narad and Uparichara Vasu were almost in front. All of the persons mentioned here are eternally liberated Nitya Parshad associates of Lord Narayan. It should be understood that Brahma and the other demigods seen in this material world are expansions of these transcendental demigods residing in Vaikuntha. This is stated in the Uttarakanda of the Padma Purana. Nitya sarve pare dhamhi ye chanye cha divokasa devaya prakrita nakesmin anityastri devishvara. All the demigods who are in the spiritual domain are eternal, whereas the demigods in this material sky are not. Text 53 to 55. Narayan was surrounded by his principal internal potencies, who are emanations from his Sarup, his personal form. Shri is the potency of wealth, Pushti, that of strength, Gir, knowledge, Kanti, beauty, Kirti, fame, and Tushti, renunciation. These are the Lord's 6 opulences. Ila is his Bhu-Shakti, also known as Sandhini, the internal potency of whom the element earth is an expansion. Urja is his internal potency for performing pastimes. She expands as the tulsi plant in this world. Interesting. Vidya and avidya, knowledge and ignorance, are external potencies who cause the living entity's liberation and bondage, respectively. Shakti is his internal pleasure potency, Ladini, and Maya is an internal potency who is the basis of vidya and avidya. The word cha in this verse indicates the jiva or tatashta shakti, who is subordinate to Maya. The prefix ni in niveshitam means nityakal, or that the Lord is eternally served by all these personified potencies. Vilokya subrasham prito bhaktya paramaya yuta rishyat tanuruho bhava pariklinatmalochana giragad dayastoshit sattvam alambya sattvata pranamya murdhnavahita kritanjali putashanai. As the great devotee Ṭhākura beheld all this, he became extremely pleased and felt enthused with transcendental devotion. His intense ecstasy caused his bodily hairs to stand on end and tears to flow from his eyes, drenching his entire body. Somehow managing to steady himself, Ṭhākura bowed his head to the ground. Then he joined his palms in supplication and, in a voice choked with emotion, very slowly and attentively began to pray. Thus ends the commentary on the 39th chapter of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, for the pleasure of the devotees in accordance with the previous acharyas. So now we come to Ṭhākura's prayers. One second, I need to drink something. 1 second. One second. Haribol, say Shri Mataji. Sorry, I missed you there. Yes, Prajna Prabhu, this is all by Kunta Bhav. Yeah, definitely. Ṭhākura's prayers. Okay, Shri Ṭhākura Uvacha. It's chapter 40. Natosmaham tva kila hetu hetung narayanam purushamadhyamavyayam yanabhijatar aravinda koshar brahma virasid yata esha loka. Shri Ṭhākura said, I bow down to you, the cause of all causes, the original and inexhaustible Supreme Person Narayan, from whom the whirl of the lotus born from your navel, Brahma, appeared. And by his agency, this universe has come into being. Commentary. In this chapter, Ṭhākura pays respects to Krishna and praises the form in which he is worshipped and the worshipping process. Ṭhākura prayed, the cause of everything is Brahma, whose cause is Narayan, the cause of all causes, who has the form of an eternal person. Narayan, who is without beginning or end, is the origin of Brahma. Bhustoyamagni pavanam kamadhir mahanajadir mana indriyani sarvendriyartha vibudhascha sarve ye hetavaste jagatonga bhuta. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, and its source, false ego. The Mahat Tattva, the total material nature and her source. The Supreme Lord's Purusha expansion, the mind, the senses, the sense objects, and the senses presiding deities. All these causes of the cosmic manifestation are born from your transcendental body. Commentary. Ṭhākura prayed, furthermore, everything that exists is an expansion from the purely conscious and ecstatic original person, the Chid Ananda Purush. The earth, water, fire, air, ether, and its origin, false ego, the Mahat Tattva, Maya, Pradhan, the living entities, the jivas, time, action, that's karma, the senses and sense objects all arise from your transcendental body, the transcendental body of you, the Purusha, as stated in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 261. Vacham Vahner Mukam Kshetram. Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purush, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of the voice, and the controlling deity is fire. Naite swarupam viduratmanaste yajadayo natmataya grihita ajo nubaddha sagunar ajaya gunat param veda nate sarupam. The total material nature and these other elements of creation certainly cannot know you as you are, for they are manifested in the realm of dull matter. Since you are beyond the modes of nature, even Lord Brahma, who is bound up in these modes, does not know your true identity. Akrura prayed, the material ingredients of creation are generated from you, but they do not know you as the Supersoul because they are covered by matter. Krishna replied, even if we accept that material things cannot know me, the conscious living entities will be able to know me. Akrura said, the living entity cannot know you even if he becomes Brahma, Aja. Why? Due to being covered by the modes of the unborn material nature, he cannot know your real form, which is beyond the three modes of material nature. Tam yogino yajantyada Tvam yogino yajantyada mahapurusham ishwaram sadhyatmam sad sadibhutam cha sadidaivam cha sadhava. Pure yogis worship you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by conceiving of you in the threefold form comprising the living entities, the material elements that constitutes the living entities' bodies, and the controlling deities of those elements. Commentary. Akrura prayed, furthermore, although no one knows you, still, since you are the bestower of all fruitive results, those who are acquiring these various fruits, even while engaged in worshiping different objects, are in truth all worshiping you. Akrura first mentions the paths of Sankhya and Yoga. Brahma and others, Yogina, worship the Lord, Ishwaram, as the Paramatma, the Mahapurusham, the witness of the Adhyatma, Adibhutam, and Adidaivam. Traya cha vidya kechit tvam vaitang nikadvija yajante vitataryagar nana rupanumar marakhyaya. Brahmins who follow the regulations concerning the three sacred fires worship you by chanting mantras from the three Vedas and performing elaborate fire sacrifices for the various demigods who have many forms and names. Commentary. Thus, Sankhya and Yoga have been mentioned, considering them together as one. This verse describes those following the path of fruit of work, karma. Akrura prayed, the Vaitanikas, the karma yogis, are indeed worshipping you. Krishna said, but they perform sacrifices to Indra, Varuna, Vayu, and other demigods, not to me. Akrura said, they are actually offering sacrifices to you by the names, by the Akhya, the names of the various demigods, appearing as Vajrahasta, that's Indra, and others. The idea behind this is as follows. In the prayers which glorify Indra, Varuna, and other demigods, these demigods are shown to have supreme power. But there cannot be many supreme controllers. Therefore, it is you alone who are being worshipped by various names. This is confirmed in the Shruti. Sa pratama sa prakatir vishvakarma sa pratamo mitra varuna agni sa pratamo brihaspati chikitvangs tasma indraya haviraju ajuhoti. He is the first. He is first. He is the material nature. He is Vishvakarma. He is the first Mitra, Varuna, and Agni. He is the first Brihaspati. In this way, offerings were made to Lord Indra, the Supreme Lord. Eke tvakila karmani sanyasyo pashamam kata jnanina jnanayagyena yajanti jnanavigraham. In pursuit of spiritual knowledge, some persons renounce all material activities and, having thus become peaceful, perform the sacrifice of philosophic investigation to worship you, the original form of all knowledge. Commentary. This verse describes those following the path of knowledge, of Gyan. Ṭhākura prayed, through Samadhi, Jnana Yajnana, they worship, Yajanti, they worship you as the original form of knowledge, the Jnana Sarup, or Jnana Vigraham. Jnana Vigraham can also mean the special taste or experience of Brahman realization. That is, Vi means Visheshato, taste or experience, and Grahanam means Ashvadanam. Okay, interesting. Of Brahman realization. Okay. Anyecha samskritatmano vidhinabhihitena te yajanti tvam mayastvam vai bahumurte kamurtikam. And yet others, those whose intelligence is pure, follow the injunctions of Vaishnava scriptures promulgated by you. Absorbing their minds and thoughts of you, they worship you as the one Supreme Lord manifesting in multiple forms. Commentary. This verse depicts the path of the Vaishnavas. The word samskritat mana, they whose intelligence is pure, implies that the worshippers mentioned before have not completely purified their intelligence of material contamination, and thus they worship the Lord indirectly. Vidhina means by the opinion of the Pancharatra, which is promulgated by Krishna. This is confirmed in the Smriti. Pancharatrasya sarvasya vakta tu bhagavan swayam. The Pancharatras were all uttered by the Lord himself. Thus, since the Pancharatra is the best evidence, it should be respected by everyone. Akrura prayed, by revealing yourself to them both internally and externally, they worship you as both having many forms and having only one form. The Gopal Tapani Upanishad 121 describes this inconceivable potency of Krishna as follows. Ekovasi sarvaga Krishna idya. That one Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and he is worshipable. And also, Ekopi san bahuda yovabhati. Although the Lord is one, he is present in innumerable hearts as many. Tvamevanye shivoktena margena shivarupinam bhafacharya vibhedena bhagavantarn upasate. There are still others who worship you, the Supreme Lord, in the form of Lord Shiva. They follow the path described by him and interpreted in various ways by many teachers. This verse describes the Shaivites, worshippers of Lord Shiva. The words Tvam Eva, you also, indicates a relative inferiority, just as in the saying, the prince is also a king. In other words, the path of worshipping Lord Shiva is indirect and therefore inferior. Bhav Acharya Vibhedena means that they worship the Supreme Lord according to the path of the various kinds of Shaivites, such as the Pashupatas. Bhagavantam Upasate, worship of the Lord, or Bhagavansam Upasate, are two versions of the last phrase of the verse. Sarva eva yajanti tvam sarva deva maheshwaram ye pyanya devata bhakta yadyapyanya diya prabho. But all these people, my Lord, even those who have turned their attention away from you and are worshipping other deities, are actually worshipping you alone, O embodiment of all demigods. Commentary. Akrura prayed, all of these worshippers, these yogis, karmis, and Shaivites, whose characteristics have thus been described, actually are worshipping you. Krishna replied, how is this? And we're ending with this purport, by the way. Akrura, this is because you comprise all the demigods, and also because you are the supreme controller. Krishna, But when asked, they will say that they are worshipping Shiva, Surya, Ganesh, and so on. Akura. Those who worship the demigods indirectly worship you as the supersoul and all the demigods, even though that is not the correct way of worshiping you. Krishna. But if that is so, then how am I being worshipped? They never for even a moment turn their remembrance toward me. Akura. Though they meditate on the demigods, not you, they are still worshiping you. So we're ending here. Verse is this? Verse 10. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. जय श्री श्री गुरु गौरांग गंधार गिरिधारी श्री श्री राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जय श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन जू की जय नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शत शिशिमार भक्तिवेदांत नारायण गोस्वामी महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शत शिशिमार भक्तिवेदांत वामन गोस्वामी महाराज की जय नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शत शिशिमार Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nityala Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashishmar Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityala Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashatara Shatashishmar Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nityala Pravishta Maha Bhagavat Srila Gorkshwaras Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nityala Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Ṭhākura ki jai. Nityala Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Raghunath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Anugauriya Guru Varga ki jai, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath, Shri Goswami Prabhu ki jai, Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya Shri Haridas Ṭhākura ki jai, Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandal, Rajamandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Sarva Abhishta Bharata Giriraj Maharaj ki jai, Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund Yamuna Ganga Tulsi Bhakti Devi ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanand, Shri Kala Krishnadas ki jai, Tadiya Shubha Tirubhav Titi ki jai, Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura Krit Sārārtha-darśinī vritti ki jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsidevai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Satyavatai Namo Namaha. Panchakalpatarubhyashta kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat pranams everybody. See you all tomorrow. Hari Bol. Hari Bol.